Hi, I'm Naima. Welcome back to my channel. This video is about dealing with prolonged uncertainty. I've been living with long COVID for about 18 months now, and again, doctors have told me the same thing. We think you will make a full recovery, we just don't know when. Over the last 2 years, many of us have found ourselves in a life that we didn't choose. We felt a sense of loss of control on both a personal and a societal level. There's something distressing about feeling like we're losing control of our lives. In this video, I set out to find out how to deal with prolonged uncertainty. I'll be sharing some of the research that I found and specific things that have helped me to navigate this precarious situation. For a long time after my diagnosis, I tried to fight what was happening in my new body. I tried to force it to behave in the way that it used to before having long COVID. All that did was prolong the stress and amplify the pain. Even after I stopped resisting the situation that I found myself in, I'd still be looking ahead to a time when I had completely recovered. I wanted to fast forward and skip ahead to an easier time when I no longer had to navigate this challenging and painful situation. More recently, I've started to move towards acceptance, accepting that I cannot control when I get better, accepting that I'm doing the best that I can, and that slowly these improvements will compound until my life is completely unrecognizable to the one I had at the worst part of my illness. But how can we get to acceptance? How can we accept something that we don't want or didn't choose or have very little control over? More recently, I've started to think about the things that I can control about my life. Instead of focusing on what I can't control, I forced myself to think about the areas that I could. During the worst period, I could no longer walk. I was bedbound most of the time. I couldn't work very much and I couldn't sit up. I started to think about the things that I could do. Those included listening to music, catching up on TV, catching up on podcasts, having calls with friends or family, writing, reading, and working a couple of hours a day with lots of breaks. I realised that I couldn't control when I got better, but I could control somewhat my stress levels. I started to reach out to loved ones for support and learn to manage my symptoms instead of resisting them. I started to realise that the opposite of uncertainty isn't certainty, it's presence, it's being in the here and now. I started to do things that would completely jolt me into the present. Some of those things include scheduling time without my phone, removing notifications, having ice cold showers, jumping into the sea. Meditation, where I focus solely on my breathing, or at least try to, and journaling, where I write completely stream of consciousness. I've also been doing some visualization techniques where I visualize what it feels like to get better and what it feels like to have more movement in my body. I eventually started to realize that for me to be able to deal with uncertainty, I needed to feel like I had some sense of purpose, something to work towards that gave my life that was comparatively empty to what it used to be, something I had a semblance of control over. Social psychologists define meaning as it applies to our lives as an intellectual and emotional assessment of the degree to which we feel our lives have purpose, value, and impact. I started to stop waiting for my new life to begin and realised I needed to find new things that meant a lot to me now. Before, it had been exercising, socialising, working lots of hours, and now I started to ask myself, what have I always wanted to do? What outcomes am I hoping for? And how can I give my life meaning even if my body is not where it used to be? I started to realise that I'd always wanted to work for myself and have complete freedom of time, to start my own business, to create something from scratch. And suddenly that was when I had this realisation that my biggest fear had already happened. My biggest fear up to this point was losing control of my body, and that had happened. My biggest fear had been realised. I'd lost control of my body and I'd become severely incapacitated by long COVID, and this led me to realise that I wasn't going to live in fear. So things that I had been fearful of, like starting a business and starting a YouTube channel, no longer seemed as scary as what I had been through day to day with this illness. This time has become a time of reflection and recalibration. It's also become a time of losing fear of what others might think, what I might not be able to achieve, and working towards a more fulfilling life. Living in uncertainty made me realise what was important to me and how I could live a fulfilling life even if I didn't have the body that I expected to have in my late 20s. I'm living a much more intentional life now, and I'm starting to accept the things that I can't control. I have another video where I talk about how I'm focusing on systems instead of goals in 2022. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.